I feel like there's this divide in the planning community between using planning as a hobby and using planning as a functional tool. Hobby planners tend to use their planner as a place where they're creative, where they doodle, and sometimes the plans are basically just text in an art project. Meanwhile, functional planners, and I'm speaking as a functional planning person, we can get a little elitist in our ways of thinking, acting as if all decoration or art in planners is somehow a waste of time. But here's the thing, you can have both. Moving planning from the entertainment column in your brain, where phone games or fidget spinners hang out, to the column that's for actually planning your life, doesn't mean giving up creativity. It just means making sure that your planning practice is actually serving you. So today, I'm walking you through a step-by-step guide to help you transition from treating planners as an irregular hobby to making it a functional daily habit, without sacrificing the joy that drew you to it in the first place. Step 1 in making your planning hobby functional is to adopt an actual planning system. One of the biggest differences between hobby planning and functional planning is having a consistent system that guides your practice. I'm talking about systems like getting things done or the 12-week year. These provide structure that prevent you from getting basically lost in the decorative weeds. You can also invent your own structure. I have a lot of videos on my channel suggesting sort of like how to create your own structure, what sort of templates you should think about, and how you should fill that in, and are tried and true and work for a lot of people en masse. And there's no shame in just adopting a system that somebody else made and tweaking it and figuring out if it works for you. But that is a really important piece because these systems help you know exactly where different types of information belong. So for example, I'm currently testing out David Allen's Getting Things Done system. He has a very well-known book about this system, or you can, look up dozens of YouTube guides, though I do really recommend reading the book. And there are different places for every type of information. So we have an inbox, you can see my tabs here on the side sort of like reflect what spaces he makes for information in his system. So an inbox where everything gets collected, a next actions list where like the next things on your to-do list go, a delegating list or waiting on list for anything that you are waiting on for somebody else to do, a list where you have projects and then references, and then a someday maybe list. And then I also built in a notes section because I would die without a notes section. So I'm trying this system and I'm keeping things like a flowchart really easily accessible to help me when I get stuck in my system. There's no shame in having guides for your system around either. I recommend keeping like sort of sticky note versions of guides, or you could even, get like a small notebook that just is devoted to information about your planning system that you tuck, in the back of your planner or somewhere else. But essentially what this does is it helps me remember the core tenets of the system I'm working in. It gives me a flow chart for what to do with each individual item, thought, project, task that comes into my inbox or that comes into my brain, and it helps me sort them into these various sections that you see here along the side of my planner. With this structure, I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time I sit down with my planner. This system is telling me where everything needs to go. It's making my planning so much less overwhelming and also more automatic. So reducing decision fatigue, making things automatic. This is exactly what a habit should be, what you want your habits to be. You don't need to adopt someone else's system wholesale. Like I said, these are available to you if you want to test them out and use them and iterate on them. I'm having a lot of fun doing that with Getting Things Done right now, but having some kind of consistent framework, whether it's one you invent or one you adopt, will transform your planning practice from this is what feels right today to this is how I organize my life. And then stickers and decoration, if you really like those things, can be built in on top of that rather than your first instinct to be going down and putting a sticker down. Your first instinct is to put your plans down, and then stickers are an added bonus on top. I also recommend creating a separate space for creative expression. So my companion advice to having this strict system is to have a dedicated messy notebook for things that require more creative thinking. So for example, I have my manager's notebook, which is a dated planner that I use to sort of plan projects and things like that. It's a highly functional planner. I try to be pretty minimal and focused, which has helped me to just stay focused essentially on what I'm like actually trying to do. This is a page I show off a lot on my planner because it's really a real example of what I'm talking about. There's not a lot of different colored pens used. All of this is functional. I understand all of it at a glance because I'm in this system all the time. And I'm not really trying to make a lot of creative decisions here. You can see I have like one sticker here and then I have like highlighting, but all that is ultimately functional and is not even that creative. Honestly, this is just because I was having a terrible night that night and I don't want to talk about that. Like, I don't want to share that on the channel. So I put a sticker here to cover it because that is a functional use of a sticker. So this planner, even when I'm getting creative or using stickers, is still highly, highly functional. And when I'm in this planner, in such a highly structured and functional environment, it really helps to have a creative book or blank journal that I can use for whatever kind of brainstorming, doodling, and creative expression I need at any given moment. And for me, that was this common planner, which is an undated common planner. It's not dated, so there's really not a lot of structure, and I can just do whatever creative thing I want to do in here. My most commonly shared pages in here are probably the pages where I'm plotting out story ideas. This is highly creative work that I'm doing, and I need to iterate on it and do it in a number of ways and be really messy. I'm not like, I like to doodle and draw. Like you can see here, I have a map for one of the stories that I'm writing. I also use it to brainstorm like ideas for my life and try new things. So for example, like in this section of the planner, I'm testing out like a new planning system. So I get to have this as a creative like tester, like petri dish of my planning ideas and my creative ideas. And I get to have this where the expression of my highly structured work goes. Obviously, I already mentioned I'm trying David Allen's Getting Things Done, and I did set that up in this notebook because this is sort of like an experimental space for me right now, and setting it up in this notebook wasn't working for me, so I did set it up externally from that notebook. But you can really see how this approach gives you the best of both worlds, right? Creativity, freedom, fun in one place, and structure and minimal intentional planning effort in another place. So you can be as creative as you want in your messy notebook while maintaining a more clean functional system for your actual planning needs. And then that way, every page in your planner doesn't need to like be beautiful and Instagram worthy, which can often be a barrier to consistent use. If you want, have a whole planner separate from your functional planner that allows you to be pretty and like just to make beautiful spreads. That could often work too. I want to take a moment to talk about something we all struggle with: our careers. We spend so much time planning our days, weeks, and months, but what about planning our actual careers? That's why I'm excited to share today's sponsor, Strawberry.me, a platform that's changing how we approach career growth. You know how we're always talking about having systems for productivity on this channel? Well, your career also needs a system. The truth is, opportunities don't just appear. People create them. That raise you deserve, or that dream job you keep scrolling past, none of that happens by accident. That's where Strawberry.me comes in. They match you with a certified career coach who helps you create a strategic roadmap for your specific career growth. They also help you develop the skills to stand out in a crowded job market and to stay accountable, so you stop waiting and start actually making real progress. What I love about Strawberry.me is that it's not just advice. It's a structured, action-oriented approach that turns career aspirations into actual achievements. And unlike therapy or general life coaching, this is specifically focused on your professional growth. So if you're ready to take meaningful steps towards your professional goals, head to strawberry.me/Rachel to take their quick matching quiz and get paired with your perfect coach. Thanks to Strawberry.me for sponsoring, and now let's get back to turning your planning hobby into a planning habit. I also recommend incorporating planning into your existing routines. So the single most important step in turning planning from a hobby into a habit is making it part of your daily routine. When planning becomes automatic, like brushing your teeth, that's when it truly transforms your life. The easiest way I've found to build a daily planning habit is to do what's called habit stacking, which is where you take an existing habit you have and you stack an additional habit on top of that. What I do for daily planning is I when I sit down at my desk, I open my planner and I start daily planning. That's my trigger. So you're sort of using a habit you already have as a trigger to prompt you to continue with other habits that you want to add to your daily routine. And so my trigger is I sit down at my desk at work and I open my planner and I just start daily planning. That's my trigger. It takes just 5 or 10 minutes at the same time every day to review and update my planner. And if you incorporate this, research tells us that habits form most effectively when they're tied to those existing routines. So stacking your planner practice to something you already do consistently will make you much more consistent and much more productive. So other examples are like sit down with your morning coffee. Maybe you make yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of tea in the morning and you do morning planning then. Or maybe you don't like planning in the morning. You prefer planning in the evening before you shut down your workspace or before you shut down your day. And then when you wake up, you have the next day's plans ready to go immediately. You don't have to do any planning in the morning. You could even just do like a lunchtime check-in with your goals and your tasks to review and then process things that come up. It doesn't have to be in the morning. That's what works for me. And honestly, it only works for me because I already have that habit of sitting down at my desk and planning. So figure out what works for you. The added benefit of this is that it forces you to use your planning tool of choice, so your planner, as a tool, not as just a creative outlet. Reviewing your plans much more frequently makes it functional. This is for a weekly reset, not a daily routine, because my daily routines are just kind of automatic now. But for my weeklies, I still have to reference a list to get my weekly resets done. And I just leave, like, my planner is littered with sticky notes like this that are like weekly routine, weekly reset, draft 2.0, so that every time I'm coming into my planner, I have a recent edition of my weekly reset to reference very fast and very quickly. I really do recommend having a daily routine and a weekly routine, but if you're stuck, just go for a daily routine. I promise it will help, and you will fit in your weekly routine as you go along and as you iterate and as you figure out what works for you. And if you've taken my earlier tip and you have a functional planner and a more creative planner, you can also have different routines for each of these books. These two things don't have to happen at the same time. So maybe your morning session is purely functional. You're just getting your tasks out of the way while you save some creative decorating for like a Sunday afternoon or before bed or whenever you have more time to enjoy the process. That can really help. Tip number 4, and I've mentioned this before on my channel, is to try the 1-pen exercise. And I talk about the 1-pen exercise a lot because I think it really works. I'm not going to spend too much time on it here, but essentially the 1-pen exercise is exactly what it sounds like. You want to commit to using only 1 pen in your planner for a set period of time, like a week or a month. Here I have a multi-pen, but I'm really just talking about like 1 pen, 1 color ink, 1 pen width. Essentially what you see here. There's no brush pens. There are some highlighters that I've incorporated, but besides that, I'm just using 1 pen, 1 pen weight for everything I need to do. And using only 1 pen forces you to focus on the content of your planning rather than the aesthetics. When you remove all the decisions about like which colors to use and what stickers to place where, which highlighting systems to implement, you free up all that mental energy for the actual planning process. I really feel like this helps, especially with decision fatigue. Like if you're opening your planner and it just feels really overwhelming, there's a lot of research to back up that every choice we make throughout the day depletes our mental resources. So by eliminating those decisions, like what color pen to use or what decoration to use every single day, you preserve energy for the actual planning and the actual execution. Like I said, I talk about this a lot on my channel, and in my last video about this, which was last month, one of you guys recommended even just limiting your tools even further to just 1 pen and like a totally blank page. If you want to do that and be that simple, like say you get a totally blank notebook and just 1 pen, go for it. This tip is about reducing as much as possible for experiment only and using that process to evaluate how much more functional your planning becomes when you're like focused on the content rather than on that decision making. And then often what I do this exercise every once in a while, and I'll often go from pages like this page where I'm using a lot of stickers, I'm using a lot of headings, I'm like using fancy bullets. I often end up going from like this kind of page to this kind of page, and it really helps me realize, actually spreadsheet to be functional, I really don't need these stickers. They're just for fun, right? Whereas if I was relying on doing this kind of spread, every single day, I might think like, oh, in order to make my planning worthwhile, I have to put stickers in, or I need a header sticker, or I need a header pen, or whatever. But you don't. You just need the one pen. And so this will help you decide what is actually necessary or what is actually fun, right? This doesn't have to totally limit your creative doodling either, or making fun designs. I personally feel like constraint breeds creativity. It's the same reason that poetry has forms, right? Shakespeare could not have produced the beauty of his sonnets unless he was trying to conform to a particular constraint, which is the form of the sonnet. So the iambic pentameter, the line length, the rhyme scheme, this all forces Shakespeare to constrain his creative ideas into this specific form. So think of the one pen exercise as a new form of expression, right? What can you create with just one pen? I think you will get a lot out of it if you are already feeling stuck and feeling like there's a lot of decision fatigue every time you open your planner because you feel the need to like do creative planning. Give it a shot. Let me know how it goes. The next tip I have for you is to focus on implementation, not perfection. So the fifth strategy is crucial for turning planning from a hobby into a habit, a successful habit. You need to prioritize actually using your planner over making it perfect. I've noticed that people who use their planners as just a hobby, and I noticed this in myself when I used to use my planner just as a hobby, is that you often get stuck in a perfection trap. So you're so concerned with making your pages beautiful that you avoid writing in your planner until you have time to like do it right. And for me, that means like days can go by without using my planner at all. When I'm so afraid that I'm gonna mess it up, that usually means that I'm not using my planner at all. But the truth is that a messy used planner is infinitely more valuable to you than a pristine and untouched one. So done imperfectly is better than planned perfectly. I'm going to repeat that again. Done imperfectly is better than planned perfectly. So try setting up some routines. I already talked a lot about like the weekly and the daily routine. Write them out on sticky notes, put them somewhere visible where you can reference them a lot. Just doing your daily and weekly routines will super help you feel more comfortable in your planner because you will be forced to use it every single day. And yes, some of those instances will result in mistakes or something ugly or something weird in your planner, but that's just life, baby. And it's totally okay to make those mistakes. So those routines are going to really help you in making sure you're in your planner. Then I also want to recommend you adopt a rough draft mindset. So give yourself permission to make those mistakes, to cross things out, and use your planner messily if that's what your day requires. And I have an example here on the screen before you, which is essentially like this whole thing was a test. I was just testing how I liked daily pages, and I'm crossing stuff off. I'm like scribbling things around. I'm writing random lists. Sometimes I have priorities, sometimes I don't. This is really inconsistent and really messy because I'm trying to give myself that rough draft mindset. I'm giving myself permission to make mistakes and to use my planner as I need to use it, when I need to use it, the way I need to use it, when my day throws me insane stuff, which happens all the time. And this removes one of the biggest barriers to consistent planning, that feeling if you can't do it perfectly, you shouldn't do it at all. Obviously, you want some consistency. Consistency when you develop what works for you is going to help reduce that decision fatigue, like I mentioned earlier, but you don't have to have everything perfect the first time. You just have to try, right? You just have to try stuff and cross it off and decide if it doesn't work. Like this method of crossing off the whole day, like I stopped doing that after a while because I didn't like the way it looked. So anyways, the point of this is to say that the most successful planning system is not going to be the prettiest one. It's going to be the one you actually use every single day. And if you are blessed with artistic talent, or if you just really like stickers, yes, you are going to have cute little planner spreads that are going to be functional and fun. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, underproductive, and kind of lost every time you open your books, I really recommend just approaching it with this rough draft mindset. You're just iterating and trying new things because that is how we grow. The goal isn't to strip all the creativity and fun out of planning. It's to make sure that planning is actually helping you live a more intentional life. When planning becomes a habit rather than a hobby, it stops being something you do only when you have time and becomes something that genuinely transforms your day-to-day experience. So let me ask you, are you more of a hobby planner or a functional planner? Or have you found a balance between the two? Let me know in the comments below. And if you try any of these strategies, I'd also love to hear how they work for you. If you liked this, you might enjoy this video next to my head with 5 more functional planning tips to help you excel in everything you do. I love you so much. Thank you so much for watching, for being subscribed, for being awesome, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!